Letitia promised to get Trump. Turns out she might have just got herself.
That I'm not going to allow my ancestors, all of those who died for me, to be in this position. I am not going to disgrace them and disappoint them. I am going to use the law both as a sword and as a shield and challenge Donald Trump. And each and every time he issues an illegal executive order, I am going to stand up to him because he represents to me sincere ignorance and conscientious stupidity.
Wire fraud, mail fraud, bank fraud, and false statements. Girls collecting charges like their Pokemon cards, and Trump. He's on Truth Social dropping resignation demands like mixtapes. Your ancestors are rolling in their graves, wondering why your sword and shield have your name stamped on the side as the defendant. If sincere ignorance is your hill, you're digging the grave. So there she was, Letitia James, the fearless crusader of no one is above the law fame, now suddenly playing hide and seek outside her Brooklyn home. And get this, she pulls the classic I'm on the phone move. Girl, who were you talking to? Legal counsel? The mortgage fairy? Or maybe just trying to call back the moral high ground she lost somewhere between justice and selective prosecution? Reporters are out there asking real questions about a federal criminal referral for mortgage fraud. You know, the kind of thing she'd normally throw a press conference for if the name was Trump. She ran straight into the warm, cozy arms of Spectrum News NY for what might have been the softest sit-down since Oprah interviewed a pillow.
Follow-up of some of what's in this letter. It says, according to media reports, which for us in the media is kind of a red flag, meaning that it seems to be based on some social media posts that I know were made by partisan political actors, but...
Oh look, it's everyone's favorite cosplay journalist, Errol the Woke Whisperer, doing his best impersonation of a hard-hitting reporter while making sure not to wake up the sleeping narrative. But wait, in President Trump's own words...
Nobody has ever heard of.
Oh yes, nobody knows who he is.
Donald Trump may have authored the art of the deal, but he perfected the art of the steal. This long-running fraud was intentional, egregious, illegal.
If the art of the steal is your standard, then listing your dad as husband is your masterpiece. That's not just fraud, it's your magnum opus. Forgive me for mistaking the art of the steal to the art of the paper trail masquerade.
I want to be clear. White-collar financial fraud is not a victimless crime.
And now for the epilogue. Letitia's defense might be my aide filled out those forms. But when Trump's massive organization was blamed for paperwork errors, she called him incompetent for not catching them. So Miss James, the buck stops with you. No bailouts allowed. Yo no comprendo English, your excuses aren't flying.
I will not be silenced. I will not be bullied. I will not bend. I will not break. And I will not bow to anyone. No one is above the law, including the President of these United States.
Okay.
Now, don't get me wrong, she's right about one thing. No one is above the law. I mean, preach. Letitia, preach. But girl, when you're involved in a mortgage fraud investigation yourself, you might want to slow down on that no one is above the law mantra. Because last time I checked, forgery is forgery, a lie is a lie, even if you're the one handing out the law. Welcome to Boney's View. I'm Ella, and this is Tales with a Twist, episode 6, and this episode is called Mortgage Fraud and Karma. This story takes me back to Tales with a Twist episode 2, Fraud and Fumble. Remember that one? Let's have a little flashback.
So yesterday, Stormy Daniels got back on the stand at Trump's hush money trial and was grilled in a cross-examination by Trump's attorneys. But listen to this. Our own little Sonny Hostin was in the courtroom yesterday.
What would Judge Sonny do?
Oh, he would be, he wouldn't be in the courtroom. He would be in jail and he would be listening to his trial there.
Wow.
Going forward, the convicted felon box on employment applications better be taken off, because if you can be the president of the United States, then you should not be prevented from employment in this country. We need to move on from January 6th. I say no. You don't move on, because January 6th was an atrocity. It was one of the worst moments in American history.
The View co-host, Sonny Hostin's husband, Emmanuel Hostin, has been accused of federal insurance fraud.
In that episode, We exposed the views Sunny Hostin's husband, and that expose racked up 24K views. If you missed it, make sure to binge that and our other series right after you finish this one, of course. Isn't it ironic? The same folks who couldn't stop hurling stones at Trump are now ducking as those same stones boomerang right back. Maybe next time they'll remember people who live in glass houses shouldn't start a rock concert. Today, we're flipping the script again. The prosecutor who sued Trump for civil fraud is now under federal referral herself for alleged mortgage fraud. Letitia James, meet your own medicine.
Following a comprehensive 3-year investigation by my office, including witnesses, interviews with more than 65 witnesses, and review of millions of documents that were submitted by Mr. Trump and others, I am announcing that today we are filing a lawsuit against Donald Trump for violating the law as part of his efforts to generate profits for himself, his family, and his company.
3 years, 65 witnesses, infinite paperwork, and all that time, you were taking shortcuts on your own mortgage. That's like getting a PhD in prosecuting fraud, then flunking your own ethics exam. Then, poetic justice. The director of the Federal Housing Finance Agency, William J. Pulte, drops a criminal referral into Letitia's inbox, alleging she falsified records to snag a $218,780 mortgage in Virginia just weeks before suing Trump. Karma's got a faster delivery service than FedEx.
The complaint demonstrates that Donald Trump falsely inflated his net worth by billions of dollars to unjustly enrich himself and to cheat the system, thereby cheating all of us.
Yes, inflation, both in Trump's portfolio and apparently in your Virginia property value. The only difference, the bank was fine with Trump's numbers, but you left them holding the bag. Sounds like the system swapped your name for his on the approved list. While Trump was slapped with a $454 million civil judgment still under appeal, Letitia's own turf isn't exactly thriving. New York's drowning in economic trouble, crimes surging, the usual catch and release circus, and there are even ethical clouds hanging over her own office. So while she's been chasing Trump for political glory, her own house, it's collapsing in slow motion. Priorities, right?
This case was brought simply because it was a case where individuals have engaged in a pattern and practice of fraud. And I will not sit idly by and allow anyone to subvert the law. And lastly, I will not be bullied.
Miss James, listing your dad as husband, turning a 5-unit building into a 4-unit discount special, and calling Virginia home while running New York's legal show. That's a pattern, all right. Just not the one you anticipated. If this is your don't be bullied moment, honey, the herd's already laughing. Meanwhile, Pulte's letter adds fuel to the fire. Miss James was required by law to have her primary residence in New York, even though her mortgage applications claimed Norfolk, Virginia as her principal home. And she consistently misrepresented a 5-family dwelling as 4 units on building permits and mortgage docs. Pulte alleges charges ranging from wire fraud, mail fraud, bank fraud, and false statements to a financial institution. The letter follows a post to Truth Social by Donald Trump linking to reports of fraud by James from a conservative media outlet. Letitia James, a totally corrupt politician, should resign from her position as New York State Attorney General immediately. Everyone is trying to make New York great again, and it can never be done with this wacky crook in office, he wrote. Wire fraud, mail fraud, bank fraud, and false statements. Girls collecting charges like their Pokemon cards. And Trump. He's on Truth Social dropping resignation demands like mixtapes. Make New York great again? At this rate, they'll have to start with fumigating the Attorney General's office. Letitia promised to get Trump. Turns out she might have just got herself. Poetic justice with a subpoena on top.
I want to be clear. White-collar financial fraud is not a victimless crime. When the powerful break the law and take more than their fair share, there are fewer resources available for working people, small businesses, and families. And everyday Americans cannot lie to a bank about how much money they have in order to get a mortgage to buy a home, or a loan to keep their business afloat, or to send their child to college. And if they did, our government would throw the book at them.
Projection much? You were dishing out lectures on throw the book while allegedly writing the book on mortgage manipulation. If white-collar fraud is so abhorrent, I can't wait for your own highlight reel, complete with an exclusive commentary track.
We did not expect this result, but we are prepared to respond to this result. And my office has been preparing for several months because we've been here before. We faced this challenge before, and we use the rule of law to fight back. And we are prepared to fight back once again. Because as the Attorney General of this great state, it is my job to protect and defend the rights of New Yorkers and the rule of law. And I will not shrink from that responsibility.
Shout out to the sign language interpreter. Now back to Letitia, fighting back. From where exactly? Fighting back from prison? If you've been preparing for months, I hope your survival kit includes self-inked notepads and legal pads. Because if you thought prepping to sue Trump was intense, just wait until the tables have turned tour starts, courtesy of federal court. Between 2019 and 21, James's office launched nearly 100 legal actions against Trump's first administration, from state and local tax salt caps to saving the post office. Yet now she's starring in her own front page saga.
That I'm not going to allow my ancestors, all of those who died for me, to be in this position. I am not going to disgrace them and disappoint them. I am going to use the law both as a sword and as a shield and challenge Donald Trump. And each and every time he issues an illegal executive order, I am going to stand up to him because he represents to me sincere ignorance and conscientious stupidity.
Your ancestors are rolling in their graves, wondering why your sword and shield have your name stamped on the side as the defendant. If sincere ignorance is your hill, you're digging the grave. Speaking of hypocrisy, let's hit some classic Letitia James moments.
He can engage in distractions, but at the end of the day, Mr. Trump, unfortunately, his entire empire was built on nothing but lies.
Ms. James, accusing someone else of empire building lies while your own legacy is paper thin. If you actually had an empire, its theme song would be Nothing But Lies on permanent loop. She even went after Trump's Westchester Golf Club and Seven Springs Estate for bond payments. Spoiler alert, they might try the same for yours. I am not saying you have golf clubs and estates. Of course you don't. But whatever asset of yours they can lay their hands on is fair game.
Good evening, everyone. This has been a 4-year investigation, and there is mountains of evidence which basically corroborate the testimony of a number of witnesses. It's also important to know that Michael Cohen is not the main witness. His evidence has been corroborated by the mountains of evidence, enough evidence to fill the courtroom. And so I look forward again to this trial continuing, and I always look forward to justice. Thank you very much.
4 years to uncover that mountain. Trump's been in office less than 90 days, and they've already found your dirt. Imagine what they'd unearth if they treated your files like a federal forensic dig at the DMV.
Donald Trump engaged in deceptive business practices and tremendous fraud. Donald Trump falsely, knowingly inflated his net worth by billions of dollars to unjustly enrich himself, his family, and to cheat the system. Donald Trump may have authored the art of the deal, but he perfected the art of the steal. This long-running fraud was intentional, egregious, illegal.
If the art of the steal is your standard, then listing your dad as husband is your masterpiece. That's not just fraud, it's your magnum opus. Forgive me for mistaking the art of the steal to the art of the paper trail masquerade.
And so, after 11 weeks of trial, we showed the staggering extent of his fraud and exactly how Donald Trump and the other defendants deceived banks, insurance companies, and other financial institutions for their own personal gain. We proved just how much Donald Trump, his family, and his company unjustly benefited from his fraud. Today, the court, once again, ruled in our favor and in favor of every hard-working American who plays by the rules.
That court ruled in our favor line has the same ring as we're above reproach until the shoe's on the other foot. If courts love rulings in your favor, maybe invest in some bulletproof documents.
And let me also remind you that the judge has already made a decision with respect to the summary judgment. There is sufficient evidence to prove that, in fact, Mr. Trump, the Trump Organization, and the other defendants committed widespread fraud.
That aged like milk on a summer sidewalk. The appeals court judge is asking who lost money here? And where's the precedent? Doesn't exactly scream slam dunk. More like, is this a political witch hunt or a coincidence?
So for the illegality claims, you look to the underlying penal law provisions. And for something like issuing false financial statements, there's no requirement for reliance. There's intent and there's materiality, which was proved at trial. But if someone issues a false financial statement to their counterparty, the counterparty gets it and is not fooled, picks up the phone and calls the enforcement authorities, the crime has still been committed, even though the counterparty didn't rely on it at all.
So that's you're pointing to Ernst & Young, you're pointing to First American. Ernst & Young, you're dealing with the collapse of Lehman Brothers. First American, you're dealing with an action brought against an appraiser who overvalued properties at the behest of a lender perpetrating a scheme to induce unsophisticated consumers into taking out home loans that they could not afford. It hardly seems that justifies bringing an action to protect Deutsche Bank against President Trump, which is what you have here. I mean, you've got two really sophisticated parties in which no one lost any money, and that was the point of my initial question. Every case that you cite involved where there was damage to consumers, damage to the marketplace. You've got a scheme to get unsophisticated consumers to take out home loans. You got a collapse of Lehman Brothers. You don't have anything like that here.
Well, first of all, Your Honor, the statute doesn't require that whatsoever for liability. And the statute is written broadly because the legislature wants the Attorney General to go in and stop fraud and illegality.
Counsel, an example of what you're talking about, I think, is People versus Allen, isn't it? There it was just a dispute among partners.
Yes,
it didn't affect the public, at all. But I think you hear underneath all these questions, the question of mission creep. Has 6312 morphed into something that it was not meant to do? And that's something you must address, because there has to be some limitation on what the Attorney General can do in interfering in these private transactions, as Justice Friedman said, that where people don't claim harm. So what is the limiting principle?
Exactly. What is the limiting principle? Meanwhile, several members of the 5-judge panel in the New York Appeals Court appeared open to potentially reversing or reducing the civil fraud judgment against Donald Trump, which currently stands at nearly $500 million. One judge described the penalty as troubling and questioned whether the state's oversight of private business dealings amounted to legitimate deterrence or veered into mission creep. Deterrence or mission creep sounds like even the judges are wondering if Letitia brought a fraud case or a Broadway audition, presenting State v. Trump, the interpretive dance of overreach. So with heat coming from every direction, questions about her mortgage, her past statements, a federal referral, and the awkward silence when it's her under the microscope, you'd think Letitia might come out swinging with a bold, clear answer. But what was Letitia's response since the news broke? Well, according to the New York Post, in an article titled Letitia James Dodges Questions About Mortgage Fraud Scandal Outside NYC Home, pretends to be on the phone. Reading from the article, embattled New York Attorney General Letitia James ducked reporters outside her Brooklyn home Wednesday, refusing to answer questions about her simmering mortgage fraud scandal. James, who infamously declared no one is above the law when prosecuting former President Donald Trump, who is now the current and 47th President of the United States, feigned talking on her cell phone as reporters peppered her with questions about her getting slapped with a federal criminal referral alleging mortgage fraud. So there she was, Letitia James, the fearless crusader of no one is above the law fame, now suddenly playing hide and seek outside her Brooklyn home. And get this, she pulls the classic I'm on the phone move. Girl, who were you talking to? Legal counsel? The mortgage fairy? Or maybe just trying to call back the moral high ground she lost somewhere between justice and selective prosecution. Reporters are out there asking real questions about a federal criminal referral for mortgage fraud. You know, the kind of thing she'd normally throw a press conference for if the name was Trump. But now, crickets, or should I say, cricket ringtones. After refusing to speak to reporters, Letitia's office fired back. Attorney General James is focused every single day on protecting New Yorkers, especially as this administration weaponizes the federal government against the rule of law. She will not be intimidated by bullies, no matter who they are. Weaponizing the justice system? The pot calling the kettle black? Girl, please. And bully, you holding your own mortgage under the microscope isn't weaponizing anything. It's called accountability. You wanted to fight fraud every single day. Congratulations, you're your own first client. after pulling the classic "I'm on a call" dodge outside her Brooklyn home, where reporters were dying to ask about her mortgage fraud mess. Letitia did what any bold, fearless truth seeker would do. She ran straight into the warm, cozy arms of Spectrum News New York for what might have been the softest sit-down since Oprah interviewed a pillow.
Follow-up of some of what's in this this letter. It says, according to media reports, which for us in the media is kind of a red flag, meaning that it seems to be based on some social media posts that I know were made by partisan political actors. But just let me ask you about some of the specifics in the letter. They're saying that your house in Brooklyn is a legal 5-family and the mortgage on it is for a 4-family house. Is that true?
So let me just say that, Errol, as any good attorney, I will not litigate this case in a camera. It's important that we will respond to these allegations at the appropriate time and in an appropriate way. But I will not go back and forth with respect to these baseless allegations. I am more focused, again, on standing up for the freedoms, the liberties, and for the rule of law in the state of New York.
Oh, look, it's everyone's favorite cosplay journalist, Errol the Woke Whisperer, doing his best impersonation of a hard-hitting reporter while making sure not to wake up the sleeping narrative. But wait, in President Trump's own words,
nobody has ever heard of.
Oh, yes, nobody knows who he is. He kicks it off with, according to media reports, which, according to us in the media, might be social media rumors possibly made by partisan political actors. Translation: I saw a tweet from a guy with an eagle in his profile pic, but I'm here to make it sound scholarly. Bravo, Errol. That's Pulitzer material right there. And then the queen of selective justice herself, Letitia No One, is above the law James, suddenly transforms into Letitia No Comment on camera James. Oh, the irony. I will not litigate this case on camera, she says. Ma'am, weren't you just on camera gleefully predicting jail time for Trump and naming his entire family tree in your pressers? But now that it's her own signature on a mortgage that doesn't match the house, it's all about freedom, liberty, and not going back and forth with baseless allegations. Girl, if hypocrisy were a floor plan, you'd have enough square footage for a 10-family house with a media room for Errol.
I was under the impression by all of this that what they were really looking for is what they got, which is a headline saying, Tish James is under a criminal investigation. Is that pretty much what's going on here?
Yeah, that's what they got. That's what they got. And it's unfortunate that you have some of these right-wing conservative individuals who are camped out in front of my home and in front of the homes of my relatives in Virginia, harassing them each and every day. And it's unfortunate, knocking on the doors of my neighbors and the neighbors of my relatives in the state of Virginia. And it is nothing more than a headline, nothing more than, again, retaliation against all of the actions that I have taken successfully against Donald Trump.
So here's Errol, the woke reporter, the embodiment of journalistic integrity, out here asking the most let's call them carefully crafted questions. He's like, what exactly is happening here, Letitia? Are you under investigation? Well, Errol, you don't say. What a groundbreaking question, my man. It's like asking, is the sky blue when there's a massive storm cloud overhead? This is prime reporting, folks. But Letitia, she doesn't want to answer these baseless questions on camera. She can't be bothered with that pesky little detail. Oh no, instead she's busy playing the victim, saying she's being harassed by those right-wing extremists for just doing her job. But here's the kicker, Errol, bless his heart, gives her the perfect opportunity to deflect, and she's right there with the classic, I can't talk about this on camera routine. Right, because you're more than willing to talk on camera about Trump and his family, but when it's about your own mortgage fraud referral, it's radio silence. The irony is delicious, isn't it?
I will not be silenced. I will not be bullied. I will not bend. I will not break. And I will not bow to anyone. No one is above the law, including the President of these United States.
Okay.
Oh, here we go again. I will not be silenced. I will not be bullied. The classic Letitia James rallying cry. Girl, please, we've heard this one before. She's practically got it on a loop, just like a broken record. I mean, who's trying to silence you, Letitia? The media? Your own conscience? Or maybe it's the federal criminal referral sitting on Pam Bondi's desk. She's standing strong, folks, in the face of this massive retaliation, but of course only when it involves her not answering the hard questions. And Errol, well, he's out here playing the good soldier, deflecting the hard questions, letting Letitia off the hook. Ah, true journalism at work. Now, don't get me wrong, she's right about one thing. no one is above the law. I mean, preach. Letitia, preach. But girl, when you're involved in a mortgage fraud investigation yourself, you might want to slow down on that no one is above the law mantra. Because last time I checked, forgery is forgery, a lie is a lie, even if you're the one handing out the law. Keep doing you, Letitia. Keep yelling about being bullied while avoiding the tough questions or even the softball questions from Errol, the woke whisperer. And remember, the law doesn't bend or break. Only your story seems to. And now for the epilogue, Letitia's defense might be my aide filled out those forms. But when Trump's massive organization was blamed for paperwork errors, she called him incompetent for not catching them. So Miss James, the buck stops with you. No bailouts allowed. Yo no comprendo English, your excuses aren't flying. And that, my friends, is mortgage fraud and karma. The prosecutor becomes the prosecuted, proof that in politics, what goes around lands in your own dossier. If you enjoyed watching irony, deliver sweet revenge, go back to Tales with a Twist episode 2, Fraud and Fumble. We keep our receipts and we never let them rust. Like, comment, share, and subscribe to Boney's View, where the twist is always on them and the punchline is on point. I'm Ella. Remember, if you play with mortgages, make sure your own papers are rock solid. Otherwise, karma's got a referral with your name on it. Peace.